Victor Kane had always been known in his town as a man who loved attention. He walked into places with his chest out, his head high, and his words sharp. He was a boxer, but more than that, he was someone who lived for the crowd. Whenever he spoke, he wanted people to cheer. Whenever he fought, he wanted people to shout his name. To Victor, the world was a stage, and he believed he was the main star of every show. From the outside, he looked successful. He wore expensive clothes, drove a shiny car, and spoke as if he were better than anyone else around him. But behind the charm and the fame, there was a problem. Victor had become too full of himself. He loved putting others down to make himself look bigger. And one of his favorite targets was women. He often said that boxing was only for strong men and that no woman could ever stand in a ring against him. People would laugh, and he enjoyed that laugh too much. On a warm Saturday afternoon, a charity event was arranged at the local community center. It was meant to raise funds for the youth training program, a program that helped young boys and girls learn discipline, sports, and teamwork. Victor had been invited as the special guest. The organizers believed that his presence would attract a crowd and bring in more donations. Victor agreed, but he did not come for the charity. He came because he loved being in the spotlight. The community center was decorated with banners, colorful balloons, and posters of boxing gloves. Families came with their children, young athletes stood around in their tracksuits, and music played in the background. Among the volunteers helping at the event was a woman named Maya Johnson. Maya was known in the neighborhood as a kind soul. She worked at the youth center almost every day, guiding the children with patience and love. She never raised her voice, never boasted about her own life, and always put others before herself. To many, she was like an older sister or even a second mother who gave advice and encouragement. When Victor arrived, the noise level went up. People rushed to greet him, and cameras flashed as he waved and smiled. He loved it. He moved around, shaking hands, signing a few autographs, and cracking jokes about how no one in the room could last even 2 minutes in a ring with him. The audience laughed, though some of them laughed more out of habit than true amusement. As the event went on, Victor noticed Maya standing quietly with a group of children, making sure they were behaving. She had a calm smile, and even though she was not trying to draw attention, something about her presence caught his eye. Instead of respecting her, Victor chose the path he knew best: mockery. He pointed in her direction and raised his voice so that everyone could hear. "You there," he said, smirking. "You look confident. Tell me, do you think you could step into a ring with me? Or would you just run away?" The crowd turned their heads toward Maya. She stood still, surprised by the sudden spotlight on her. The children beside her grew quiet, watching closely. Victor's words were meant to be a joke, a way to entertain the crowd at her expense. Maya, however, did not laugh. She looked at him, then at the crowd, and answered calmly, "I don't run away from challenges." Her voice was not loud, but it carried strength. People murmured, surprised by her response. Victor raised his eyebrows and grinned. He felt a chance to show off again. "Well, then," Victor said, "how about we make this interesting? How about you and me, right here, right now, a little sparring match? Nothing serious, just a show for the crowd. Unless, of course, you're too afraid." The crowd gasped and then broke into mixed reactions. Some laughed, thinking it was all in good fun. Others shook their heads, uncomfortable with the way Victor was trying to embarrass her. The children near Maya looked nervous, but she placed a gentle hand on one boy's shoulder and said softly, "It's all right." For a moment, it seemed like Maya might decline. After all, she was not dressed for a fight, and she was not there to prove herself. She was there to serve the community. But then she saw the way Victor was smiling, the arrogant smile that told everyone he thought he had already won before even starting. She also saw the young girls in the audience, watching closely. She knew what they might think if she refused. They might believe that a woman should always back down when challenged. And Maya was not going to let that message stand. "I accept," Maya said, her voice clear. The room fell silent for a second, then erupted in noise. Some cheered, some laughed, and some couldn't believe what they had just heard. Victor's grin grew wider. He thought this was his moment of glory. He imagined the crowd cheering as he danced around her, making her look weak. He imagined the headlines in the local paper, "Victor Kane shows off against community worker." But Maya had her own thoughts. She remembered her younger years, when she had trained in boxing as a teenager. Few people in the room knew this part of her life. She had once competed in amateur tournaments, earning respect for her sharp moves and her strong spirit. But life had pulled her away from the sport when her family needed her. She chose responsibility over personal glory. Still, the training had never left her. It lived quietly in her memory, waiting for a day like this. As the organizers scrambled to clear a small space and bring out gloves, the crowd gathered closer. Children sat on the floor, their eyes wide. Adults leaned forward, whispering to one another. Some doubted Maya, thinking she was about to be humiliated. Others hoped to see her surprise Victor. Victor stretched his arms, rolled his shoulders, and walked around like a peacock showing off its feathers. He whispered jokes to the people near him, making sure everyone saw him as the confident champion. Maya, on the other hand, tied her hair back, tightened the gloves, and stood quietly in one corner. Her calmness was different from his showmanship. A man with a whistle stepped forward to act as referee. He raised his hand and announced, "This is only for fun. No heavy blows. Keep it clean." Victor nodded, but his eyes sparkled with mischief. He wanted this to be his stage, his performance. Maya simply gave a small nod and looked straight ahead. The bell rang, and the crowd leaned in. Victor bounced lightly on his feet, waving his arms in a playful way, as if mocking the idea that Maya could even touch him. He circled around her, throwing little jabs in the air, not even close enough to connect. The crowd chuckled, and Victor felt proud of his act. He turned his head and winked at a group of fans. But Maya did not laugh. She stayed steady, her eyes watching his every move. Her posture showed balance, her steps were measured, and her breathing was calm. She looked nothing like a nervous volunteer. She looked like someone who knew what she was doing. And that was the moment some people in the audience began to sense this was not going to be the show Victor had planned. The first few moments inside the ring looked exactly how Victor Kane had imagined. The crowd laughed as he danced around, lifting his gloves and pretending to be playful. He jabbed the air, made silly faces, and even turned his back for a second, showing that he did not take Maya seriously. The people who came to see him were clapping and cheering, enjoying the show. They were certain that this match would be nothing more than entertainment, a way for Victor to humiliate a woman and then leave the ring smiling. But as the seconds passed, something began to shift. Maya did not look nervous. She did not flinch or stumble. Her feet were steady, her shoulders relaxed, and her eyes stayed on Victor like a hawk watching its prey. She did not answer his jokes with anger, and she did not try to match his energy with loud gestures. Instead, she stood calmly, moving only when necessary. This quiet confidence started to make a few people in the crowd curious. Victor noticed it too, though he did not admit it. He tried harder to make her look foolish. He leaned close and whispered loud enough for people near the ring to hear, "I hope you don't break a nail." Laughter followed, but Maya didn't react. She simply raised her gloves and stayed ready. The referee finally stepped between them and signaled for the first round to officially begin. The bell rang again, and now the crowd expected to see Maya struggle. Victor rushed forward, swinging his arm lightly toward her shoulder. He expected her to stumble backward. Instead, she blocked it with a smooth motion, turning her body just enough to let his punch slide off harmlessly. Some people gasped. They hadn't expected her to know how to block. Victor's grin slipped a little, but he quickly tried again. This time he threw a faster jab, aiming for her midsection. Maya shifted her feet and stepped aside, letting his punch cut through empty air. She moved so gracefully that a boy in the front row shouted, "Whoa!" Victor's pride began to itch. He had wanted this to be a joke, but suddenly it was turning into something else. Still, he refused to take her seriously. He backed up, lifted his arms in an exaggerated way, and shouted to the crowd, "Don't worry, folks. I'm just warming up." The crowd laughed again, but now their laughter felt uncertain. They were not laughing at Maya anymore, they were laughing because they didn't know what else to do. Maya kept her focus. She remembered her years in the gym as a teenager, the endless hours of training, the sound of the speed bag, the way her coach told her that patience was a fighter's best weapon. She didn't plan to attack Victor too soon. She knew his arrogance would make him careless. She only had to wait. Victor charged again, throwing a flurry of jabs. They were quick, but sloppy. He wanted to overwhelm her, to push her back and make her look small. Instead, Maya blocked one, sidestepped another, and ducked under the third. Her movement looked so natural that some people in the crowd started clapping. Victor heard the claps and grew angry. He wanted the crowd to laugh at her, not cheer for her. His cheeks flushed, and he threw a stronger punch, aiming for her arm. This time, Maya did not just block, she countered. With one swift motion, she tapped his glove away and sent a quick punch toward his side. It landed lightly but firmly, enough to make him stumble back a step. The audience gasped. A few even shouted her name. Victor's grin disappeared completely. He stepped back, blinking in disbelief. That was not supposed to happen. He rubbed his side and stared at her, trying to figure out if it had been an accident. But Maya's eyes told him the truth. She knew exactly what she was doing. For the first time, Victor felt something unusual inside the ring: uncertainty. He had fought many opponents, but all of them came in with either fear or fire. Maya had neither. She was calm, like someone who had already seen everything and had nothing to prove. Her silence made him uncomfortable. He tried to recover his pride by turning to the crowd. "She got lucky," he shouted. "Don't get too excited." But the crowd wasn't convinced. The noise in the room had changed. The laughter was gone. Instead, people leaned forward, eager to see what would happen next. Children who had come expecting a silly show were now wide-eyed, realizing they were witnessing something different. Victor decided to put an end to it. He took a deep breath and launched forward with all the arrogance he had left. His punches came faster and harder, but in his anger, his technique began to slip. Maya's training shone in that moment. She did not try to match his speed. Instead, she used his aggression against him, stepping back at the right moment, turning her body just enough to avoid his strikes, and answering with short, sharp counters. Each time she landed a clean shot, the crowd grew louder. A light jab to his shoulder. A quick punch to his ribs. A perfect block followed by a counter to his chest. She wasn't hurting him badly, but she was showing everyone that she was not a toy for his entertainment. Victor's breathing grew heavier. Sweat appeared on his forehead. He had wanted to humiliate her, but now he was fighting just to keep his pride. His fans in the audience began to grow quiet, while others started cheering for Maya, impressed by her discipline and courage. Maya, still calm, told herself silently, "Don't rush. Stay steady. Respect yourself, respect the fight." She was not fighting to embarrass Victor. She was fighting to show that dignity and strength can shine even when someone tries to make you small. As the round neared its end, Victor swung wildly, throwing a heavy punch toward her head. Maya ducked low and answered with a smooth counterpunch that touched his chin just enough to make him freeze. The bell rang a second later, ending the round. The crowd erupted in cheers. Some clapped, some whistled, and some shouted Maya's name. Children jumped up and down, excited by what they had seen. The entire mood of the room had changed. What was supposed to be a joke had become a contest, and Maya had proven she belonged. Victor walked back to his corner, his pride bruised more than his body. He grabbed a towel and wiped his face, trying to hide his frustration. He could feel the eyes of the crowd on him, and for the first time in years, he was not sure if they were laughing with him or at him. Maya stood quietly in her corner, breathing slowly, her face calm. She did not raise her arms in victory, she did not taunt him, and she did not smile proudly. She simply waited, ready for the next round, showing the same dignity that had carried her through the first. And in that silence, the crowd realized something powerful. This fight was no longer about a man trying to humiliate a woman. It was about a woman showing the world that respect cannot be forced or mocked, it must be earned. The second round began with a different energy in the room. The crowd that had once laughed at the idea of Maya stepping into the ring was now fully alert. Their eyes followed every move, every step, every breath. The children who had sat cross-legged on the floor were now on their knees, leaning forward as if they might jump into the ring themselves. Even the adults, who had come for fun and casual entertainment, were beginning to sense that something far more meaningful was unfolding before them. Victor Kane stood in his corner, sweat rolling down his forehead. His coach tried to hand him water, but Victor pushed it aside, too angry to accept advice. He glared at Maya across the ring. She wasn't smiling, she wasn't celebrating, and she wasn't even breathing heavily. She looked calm, almost peaceful, as if she were exactly where she belonged. And that calmness only fueled his frustration. The bell rang again, signaling the start of the second round, and Victor rushed forward without waiting. His pride had been shaken in front of his fans, and he couldn't allow it to continue. He threw a heavy right hand, aiming straight for Maya's head. The punch came fast, but Maya slipped to the side with perfect timing. She didn't just dodge, she made him look clumsy. With one quick motion, she tapped his ribs with a short counter. It wasn't hard enough to hurt him badly, but it was sharp enough to sting his pride. The crowd erupted. Cheers and gasps filled the air, and a chant started to rise, soft at first, then louder. Maya! 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 Victor's jaw tightened. He had never been in a ring where the cheers weren't for him. He had always been the star, the one everyone wanted to see win. But now, in his own town, the people were turning. And they weren't just cheering for her boxing skills, they were cheering for her strength, her courage, her refusal to bow to humiliation. He growled under his breath and launched another attack. This time, he used his full strength. He swung his arms with fury, aiming at her head, her shoulders, her sides. His punches came in wild flurries, each one faster and harder than the last. But his anger made him careless. His form was breaking, his balance was slipping. Maya stayed composed. Every time he swung, she shifted her weight, stepping just out of reach or raising her gloves to block. And when she saw the opening, she struck back with precision, a jab to his chest, a quick punch to his side, a clean touch to his chin. Each move was sharp, controlled, and effective. The crowd's cheers grew even louder. Children shouted her name, women in the audience clapped and cheered with pride, and even some of Victor's longtime fans began to whistle for her. Victor stumbled backward after one of her counters and looked out at the audience. He could hardly believe what was happening. His pride burned hotter than the sweat dripping down his face. He had wanted this to be a joke, but now he was in danger of becoming the punchline himself. His mind raced. He thought, this can't be real. She's just a volunteer, a woman who works with kids. She can't actually fight me. I won't let her win. But the truth was undeniable. Maya was not only matching him, she was outclassing him. In the third minute of the round, something unexpected happened. Victor threw a desperate hook, and Maya ducked under it so smoothly that she looked as if she had read his mind. Then, with perfect timing, she delivered a quick two-punch combination, a jab to his shoulder followed by a clean strike to his cheek. Victor staggered. The sound of the punch echoed in the gym, and the audience gasped. For a moment, time seemed to freeze. Victor's body wobbled as he tried to regain his footing. He blinked, shaken by the realization that he had been hit fairly, cleanly, and powerfully in front of everyone. Maya did not celebrate. She did not lift her arms or shout. She simply stepped back, allowing him space to recover, showing the same quiet dignity that defined her. That choice made the crowd cheer even louder. They weren't just cheering for a fighter, they were cheering for a person who carried respect, even in the heat of battle. Victor's chest rose and fell quickly as he struggled to catch his breath. He could hear the chants, the cheers, the energy of the crowd, and none of it was for him. For the first time in his career, he felt small inside the ring. His arrogance had built a wall around him, but that wall was crumbling under the weight of Maya's calm strength. The referee called for the end of the round, and both fighters returned to their corners. The crowd buzzed with excitement, talking loudly among themselves. Some people said they had never seen anything like it. Others whispered that Maya could actually win this. In her corner, Maya sat quietly, sipping water. Her heart was steady, her breathing calm. She reminded herself of why she had accepted the challenge in the first place. It wasn't about pride, and it wasn't about proving she was stronger than Victor. It was about showing the children watching and everyone else that dignity and courage can stand tall even when mocked. She had stepped into the ring not to hurt him, but to stand for respect. On the other side, Victor was pacing like a caged animal. His coach tried to calm him, but he shoved the man away. His pride screamed louder than any advice he could hear. He clenched his fists and muttered, "I'll end this. I'll finish her." The third round began, and the tension in the air was heavy. Everyone knew this round could change everything. Victor stormed forward, determined to overwhelm her. He swung with all the strength he had left, his muscles straining with every punch. But the harder he tried, the easier it became for Maya to see his mistakes. She blocked, dodged, and countered with precision. Then came the moment that defined the fight. Victor, desperate and furious, lunged forward with a wide swing. Maya stepped aside and landed a perfect counterpunch straight to his jaw. The sound echoed through the gym. Victor's head snapped back, and his legs wobbled. He stumbled, falling to one knee. The crowd exploded with noise. Cheers, gasps, and claps filled the air. Children jumped up and down, shouting Maya's name. Adults clapped so hard their hands stung. The chant of "Maya! Maya! Maya!" roared through the building like thunder. Victor tried to stand quickly, his pride refusing to let him stay down. He pushed himself up, his face red, his breathing rough. But everyone had already seen it, the arrogant champion had been brought to his knees by the woman he had mocked. Maya, still calm, took a step back and waited. She didn't rush him, didn't strike again while he was down. She gave him space, showing respect even when she had the upper hand. The crowd noticed this too, and their cheers grew even louder. The bell rang, ending the round. Victor staggered to his corner, humiliated but unwilling to give up. The audience, however, no longer cared about his pride. Their hearts and voices belonged to Maya. She had not only proven her skill, she had shown the world that true strength doesn't shout, mock, or boast. It moves with quiet dignity, steady courage, and respect for the fight itself. And though the match was not over yet, everyone in that room knew one thing: the unexpected had already begun. The air inside the community center had changed completely. At the start of the fight, People had come expecting an easy show, a joke at Maya's expense, and an afternoon of laughter. But now, after 3 rounds, the laughter was gone. In its place was an energy that no one could ignore. Children shouted Maya's name with shining eyes, adults clapped until their hands hurt, and even those who had once cheered for Victor Kane sat silently, unable to deny what they were witnessing. Victor sat in his corner with his head down. His chest rose and fell quickly as he tried to control his breathing. Sweat dripped from his face onto the mat. His pride, which once stood taller than his body, now weighed heavily on his shoulders. He had never imagined being in this position on the edge of defeat, with the crowd cheering for someone else. His coach leaned close, whispering words of advice, but Victor hardly listened. All he could think about was how badly he wanted to win back the respect that had slipped from his grasp. Across the ring, Maya stood quietly, sipping water. She was calm, breathing evenly, her eyes steady. She wasn't tired, at least not in the way Victor was. Years of quiet discipline had taught her how to pace herself, how to save energy, how to let the storm of an opponent's anger pass without getting caught in it. She reminded herself of her purpose. She had not stepped into the ring to humiliate anyone. She had stepped in because dignity matters, because young eyes were watching, and because sometimes silence needs to be broken by action. The bell rang again, calling them back for the next round. The crowd leaned forward, eager, their voices filling the room like a wave. Victor rose from his seat, his fists clenched, his jaw tight. He walked forward with heavy steps, his pride still urging him to fight, but deep inside, doubt had begun to creep in. They touched gloves, and the round began. Victor charged quickly, swinging with all the strength he could gather. His fists cut through the air, his muscles straining, his breath sharp. He wanted to crush the chant of Maya. Maya, that rang through the room. But with each furious swing, his balance slipped. His anger had taken control, and his punches came without thought. Maya, on the other hand, moved with perfect clarity. She blocked, sidestepped, and ducked, using as little energy as possible. Each time she avoided his punch, she answered with a clean, sharp counter, a jab to his ribs, a touch to his shoulder, a light strike to his jaw. The crowd cheered louder with every clean hit she landed. Victor grew desperate. He thought, if I don't end this now, I'll lose everything. With a loud growl, he threw a heavy swing aimed at her head. It was powerful but reckless. Maya's eyes read the punch before it even arrived. She stepped aside, and in one fluid motion, she delivered a counter punch directly to his cheek. The sound of the strike echoed through the hall. Victor stumbled backward, his legs unsteady, his arms flailing as he tried to keep his balance. The crowd gasped, then erupted into cheers. Children leapt to their feet, adults clapped wildly, and voices rose together in thunderous shouts of Maya's name. Victor crashed against the ropes, breathing hard, his pride breaking in front of everyone. His mind raced. This can't be happening. Not to me. Not here. Maya didn't chase him. She didn't mock him. She stood calmly in the center of the ring, her gloves up, her eyes steady, waiting for him to return. That patience, that dignity, made the moment even more powerful. The crowd noticed, and their cheers grew even louder. Victor, shaking, pushed himself off the ropes. His face showed anger, but also fear that he was losing not just the fight, but the image he had built for himself over the years. He rushed forward again, throwing wild punches in every direction. Maya stayed calm, her body moving like water. She slipped past his swings, blocked with ease, and struck back with sharp precision. Every punch she landed told a story. It wasn't a story of violence, it was a story of discipline, respect, and strength that came from within. Then came the turning point, the moment that no one in the room would ever forget. Victor, desperate to regain control, charged one final time with all his strength. He lifted his arm high for a powerful swing, but his body was wide open. Maya saw the opportunity. With perfect timing, she stepped in and delivered a strong, clean combination: a jab to his chest, a hook to his ribs, and then a straight punch to his chin. Victor's head snapped back, and his body wavered. His knees buckled, and with a loud thud, he fell onto the mat. The crowd erupted into a roar so loud it shook the walls. Children screamed with excitement, women clapped with tears in their eyes, and even the men who had once doubted Maya jumped to their feet in awe. The referee rushed to Victor, beginning the count. 1, 2, 3. Victor groaned, trying to push himself up. His arms trembled, his legs shook, and his pride screamed for him to stand. But his body would not obey. The referee kept counting. 4, 5, 6. The chant of Maya, 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 filled the room like music. At 7, Victor managed to get one knee up. At 8, he tried to push himself to his feet. But his balance was gone, and he stumbled again. 9. The crowd held its breath. 10. The referee waved his arms. The fight was over. Victor collapsed back onto the mat, his face pale, his pride shattered. For the first time in his life, he had been defeated not by another professional boxer, but by the very person he had mocked, the woman he had tried to humiliate. The room shook with cheers. Children ran closer to the ring, shouting Maya's name. Adults clapped until their hands hurt. People hugged each other, unable to believe what they had just witnessed. And in the middle of it all, Maya stood calmly, her gloves still raised but her expression peaceful. She did not gloat, she did not shout, she did not celebrate wildly. She simply bowed her head slightly, acknowledging the crowd with humility. Her victory was clear, but her dignity made it shine even brighter. Victor lay in his corner, staring at the ceiling, unable to process the reality. The man who had lived for the crowd had lost everything in one moment, while the woman who never asked for glory had gained the respect of everyone in the room. As the cheers continued, people realized the fight had become more than just a match. It was a lesson. It was proof that arrogance can fall, that dignity can rise, and that true strength does not need to shout, it only needs to stand firm when the world tries to push it down. Maya's unexpected triumph had changed the story completely. What began as an attempt to humiliate her had turned into the moment where she revealed her true power, not just as a fighter, but as a person who carried herself with grace and strength. And though the match was over, everyone knew the story of what happened that day would live far beyond the walls of that community center. The cheers in the community center lasted long after the referee's count had ended. People were still on their feet, clapping, whistling, and shouting Maya's name. Children jumped up and down, repeating the moment they had just seen as if they wanted to keep it alive forever. Adults who had first doubted her were now speaking with excitement, telling one another, "Did you see that? She stood her ground. She didn't even flinch." The building was filled with voices, laughter, and applause, but none of it was for Victor Kane. Victor sat on a stool in his corner, his gloves hanging low, his head down. He felt the sting of defeat in every part of his body, but the heavier sting was inside his chest. His pride had been broken. He had stepped into the ring expecting to humiliate a woman and walk away laughing. Instead, he had been the one humbled in front of the very people who once cheered for him. Sweat dripped into his eyes, and though he tried to hide his feelings, it was clear to everyone that he was shaken. Meanwhile, Maya stood in the center of the ring, her gloves still up, her posture calm. She did not lift her arms in victory, she did not shout, and she did not look down at Victor with mockery. Instead, she closed her eyes for a brief moment, took a steady breath, and then lowered her gloves slowly. Her quietness made the victory even more powerful. The crowd could see that she hadn't fought for pride, fame, or revenge. She had fought for something far bigger: dignity and respect. The referee raised her hand, announcing her as the winner. The sound of the crowd grew even louder, echoing like thunder through the gym. Maya gave a small nod, acknowledging their cheers, but she did not let her face break into arrogance. She stayed the same as she had been from the start: steady, strong, and humble. After the announcement, the children who admired her most began to chant louder, "Maya! Maya!" Their little voices carried a kind of joy that touched everyone in the room. The young girls in the crowd especially looked at her with shining eyes. For them, she was no longer just a kind volunteer at the youth center. She had become proof that a woman could stand tall in any place, even one where others doubted her. Victor slowly lifted his head and looked at Maya. His face was red, not just from the fight but from shame. He expected her to laugh at him, to use the moment to throw his own insults back at him. But instead, Maya walked over to his corner. She removed her gloves and held out her hand to help him up. For a moment, Victor just stared at her hand. Pride fought inside him. He wanted to refuse, to stand on his own. But something in her eyes stopped him. There was no arrogance, no anger, no desire to humiliate him further. There was only respect. Slowly, he took her hand, and she helped him stand. The crowd, seeing this, grew silent for a moment. Then, one by one, people began clapping again, this time not just for Maya's victory, but for the lesson she had just shown. Respect, even after triumph, is what made her victory shine brighter. Maya looked at Victor and spoke softly, but her words carried through the entire room: "Respect is earned, not demanded." The words struck deep. They were simple, but they carried weight. People in the crowd nodded, whispering them to one another. For the children, those words became a lesson they would remember. For Victor, they cut deeper than any punch he had received that day. He nodded slowly, unable to say much. His throat felt heavy, and his pride, though wounded, understood the truth in her words. He realized in that moment that all his years of arrogance had gained him attention, but not respect. What Maya showed him was that real strength did not need to shout: it revealed itself in actions, in patience, and in dignity. The event ended, but the story did not. People left the gym talking excitedly, carrying the memory of what they had witnessed. Parents told their children, "Did you see how she stayed calm? That's real strength." Children repeated Maya's name as they walked home, dreaming of becoming strong and confident like her. And even those who had come to see Victor show off went home thinking about the lesson they had learned. In the weeks that followed, the story spread beyond the community center. Local newspapers wrote headlines like, "Volunteer stuns town with boxing skills," and "Unexpected champion teaches lesson in respect." Photographs of Maya standing calmly in the ring appeared on posters and in articles. People who had never met her before wanted to shake her hand and thank her for showing courage. But Maya did not let the attention change her. She continued her work at the youth center, teaching children discipline and kindness. When asked about the fight, she always smiled gently and said, "It wasn't about winning. It was about showing what respect really means." Victor, on the other hand, had to face himself. At first, he tried to avoid the whispers and the news. He stayed away from public places, embarrassed by the memory of the fight. But after some time, he realized he had a choice. He could stay trapped in his pride, or he could learn from his defeat. Slowly, he began to change. He returned to the gym, but this time he trained with humility. He stopped mocking others and started encouraging younger boxers. He even returned to the youth center one day, not as a star, but as a volunteer. When he saw Maya there, working with children, he walked up to her. For the first time, his voice was soft when he said, "Thank you. That day changed me." Maya simply nodded, her calm smile showing she understood. She hadn't fought to destroy him. She had fought to awaken something not only in him, but in everyone watching. The children at the youth center now had a story they would never forget. Whenever they faced challenges, they reminded each other of Maya's calm strength. "Remember how she stood in the ring," they would say. "If she can do that, we can face anything." The fight that began as a joke turned into a story of transformation. It showed the danger of arrogance and the beauty of humility. It revealed that true champions are not the ones who demand respect but the ones who live in a way that naturally earns it. For Victor, it was the day his arrogance finally broke, making space for growth. For Maya, it was the day her quiet dignity was seen by the world, inspiring everyone who watched. And for the community, it became a story to pass on, a story of the unexpected, where the person meant to be humiliated became the teacher, and the one who sought to laugh became the student. Even years later, when people gathered at the youth center, they still spoke of that day. They told new children about the arrogant boxer and the calm woman who taught him a lesson in front of everyone. They repeated her words like a proverb: "Respect is earned, not demanded." And each time the story was told, the lesson lived on, reminding everyone that true strength is not in shouting, mocking, or humiliating others. True strength is in standing with dignity, acting with discipline, and choosing respect even when you have the chance to do otherwise. That was the unexpected gift Maya gave her community, and it was a gift that continued to grow long after the fight was over.